Okay, so we got this 2159 torn down and got this old cylinder pulled. So the aftermarket cylinder that was on it is a no name brand, no markings cylinder. Squish stock was 50 thousandths, I believe he checked it at. It's been a long time, I don't remember exactly, but it was pretty large. 50 thousandths right at the band around the outside, but the actual whole squish area, I believe, was even more, like 60 or something like that. So he did some machine work, cleaned up the ports, opened it up a little bit, trying to make the best he could out of it. But I think it was kind of doomed before it started. Without major work, I don't know that it was salvageable. Well, obviously it wasn't salvageable because where it ended up ain't gonna work. So I'm not gonna get into specifics on this one, but my two areas of concern with it, or where I have my issues, is the intake is way too low, or way too long a duration, if you will. And he didn't grind on the bottom of the port, so I know he didn't lower it any more than what it was, other than from cutting the base. And he cut the base trying to improve a monster squish area. My guess is it probably already had a pretty low intake. And also, we talked about measuring with the proper thickness of solder. You know, I think I've mentioned in another video, maybe, I don't remember when, but when you're checking squish, you want to use a solder that's, you know, just barely thicker than what your squish number is or what you think it might be. Too thick of a solder won't actually smash. It'll only compress to a point and then it'll stop. So I don't know that that's what happened here, but anyways, the squish, when I measured it, was 13 thousandths. And there's evidence that it tried to start kind of eating itself. So anyways, intake too low and the squish being way too tight. It's not salvageable. We aren't going to reuse it. So he did the right thing. Went and bought a 357 XP top end and sent it up here. So we ported it up, and we're going to tidy up a couple of things on the saw while we got it here, but I'll bring you in to look at these cylinders so you can get an idea. Anywho, so this cylinder, I don't know if any of this will show up for you, but the maybe if I zoom in here. So it doesn't really show it, but the upper transfers on this are super small, like really tiny. And there's quite a fair amount of scoring on the exhaust side. I'm doing this more for document for him so he can see what's inside of it, because it's always nice to know. He'll get the cylinder back, but anyways, a bunch of scoring on the exhaust side, a fair amount on the intake side. I don't know if that'll show up, but that's that squish band area, that giant ring cast in there. And there was also a lot of gasket maker that made its way inside too, so I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but there's a lot of it in the crankcase and up around in here. But usually it'll just, sounds crazy, but I've seen builds where it'll make it all the way out and plug the muffler screen. So I don't think that contributed anything to the scoring, but the chunkage and stuff happening in here indicates that 13,000 squish was starting to do bad things, maybe. I mean, there's a million other contributing factors, but so what we have now is this 357 XP cylinder. Change the timing on it, widen the ports, cut the base a little. Factory just stock the way it came with the factory base gasket. The squish was 40 thousandths. Intake was 72 degrees, exhaust 105, and the transfer is 123. Cut 20 off the base, set our squish right at 20, 19 or 20. Intake's now at 74, exhaust 107, and transfers are at 125. After we did some grinding on it, the intake landed at 77 degrees, exhaust at 103, and the transfers I raised back to 121 degrees. So we're back to our 18 degrees blowdown. This size saw with these quad ports seems like they do pretty all right, 18 to 20 degrees of blowdown. I also widened the ports. They were 27 millimeter wide from the factory. We went to 30, which is about 65% of the bore. So as far as the grinding goes, I unshrouded the primary side of the lower transfers. Not much, but they were... Oh, that's a better shot. The bridge was way out into here, kind of impeding flow quite a bit, so I unshrouded them just a little bit. Nothing major. Just help things flow a little bit better. This 2159, there's no crank stuffers. So, yeah. I'll show up, but on the intake floor, we kept it pretty flat profile. Left it rough. Exhaust, got it polished up. Polished it up pretty good. Anyways, kept a nice arch profile. There's a little bit of a casting imperfection on the left there. I don't know what that's all about. And from the inside, here's the intake, exhaust, upper transfers. Everything nice bevel, nice and smooth. So squish band looks really nice on this. There's no big ring of death up around the outer edge like there are in some. Practically non-existent, so fit and finish is pretty darn good on this cylinder. So we'll get it slapped back together and hopefully he likes the way it runs.